genre.
In the world of Hollywood, movies get greenlit and redlit. They get remade and rebooted. But we are the ideal. I'm Sam Gasch, and you are listening to Ideal Remake. Thank you for listening to Ideal Remake. We take movies that either have been, will be, or should be remade and talk about what the ideal version of that remake would be. Today, the moon is out, the wolf's bane blooms, and who knows what monsters lurk in the shadows. So, Scott, is The Wolfman a movie that has been, will be, or should be remade?
It has been and should be again.
Yep, I agree with all of that.
Well, one of those things is a fact, so you can't really
Yes.
disagree with that.
I think you'll find in the past few years, people have gotten real comfortable disagreeing with facts. But yeah, Scott, welcome back to the last of our spooky Halloween episodes. Thank you for taking the time to do all of these. It's been incredible.
Of course. It's sort of a spooky monster themed. It was sort of like what we had. We had ghosts, we had vampires, and now we got werewolves.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've enjoyed watching 3 movies I'd never seen before.
Yeah, nice. That's great.
I've seen other Universal monster movies, but Wolfman, for whatever reason, was never one of them.
Wolfman was the one that I watched the most as a kid.
Interesting.
I think I've always been fascinated by werewolves. I just think that werewolves are I don't know, they're really interesting. And I was thinking about this last night, and I was like, if monsters were real and I could choose any to be, right, I would want to be a vampire because that seems like the coolest. It's the most human adjacent, right? And I don't even have to necessarily, depending on the kind of vampire you are, you don't necessarily have to kill anybody. You can go to the butcher shop and get your blood, like whatever. It was good enough for Angel. It's good enough for me. But I was also thinking, I was like, but with my luck, I would get stuck being a werewolf, which would be like, I feel like the worst one to be. I mean, other than like a zombie, I guess would probably be the worst one because you're like technically dead. But like, yeah, I don't know. It really does seem like a cursed existence because you have no control over the other version of you. And yeah, it just really sucks. And I was like, yeah, that's probably the guilt and everything. I was like, yeah, that's probably the one I'd get stuck with.
It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but with even less control over your other half.
Yeah, because there's no drink you can drink to stop the other half from happening.
Well, there is in the script that I wrote, but that's a separate thing. I wrote that years ago. People should buy it. It's a really good script. It's called The Horrors. Scott, you've never read it, but trust me, it's great. I play with all sorts of lore in fun and interesting ways. And honestly, if anyone in Hollywood is interested, I can sell you that script now. Please buy my movie.
Good.
But that's kind of what I like about werewolves and vampires and all of the classic Universal monsters is that they have rules. Like, they have specific rules.
Yeah.
And I find playing around with the rules to be the most interesting. Although Wolfman introduced a rule that I was not familiar with.
The palm thing?
The palm thing. The seeing the pentagram on the palm.
For the upcoming victims. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, honestly, like, there's a level of supernaturality there where, like, I could see 100 years ago that making sense in terms of just like, well, obviously you'll know, but like just the extra element of the supernatural and just like an extra psychic nature of the powers, which I find really interesting.
Yeah,
which is also probably why it hasn't been played with since.
Right. The really leaning heavily into the curse part of being a werewolf, which is. I'm sure there are other examples of werewolf movies really leaning into that, but I find that the Wolfman specifically is really the only one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
A lot of the other ones are like, oh, it's a curse that this is happening to me, but it's not a literal curse. It's more just like a metaphorical curse of like, I feel cursed because this is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like in American Werewolf in London, him being haunted by the corpses of the people, his victims, right?
Yeah.
That is certainly a curse.
Interesting twist. Oh,
yeah,
sure.
It's very, very interesting twist. One of the coolest things that they did in that movie, adding to the lore. But yeah,
and the bodies decompose as their real lives body decompose in the ground. It's great.
Yeah.
And then and even you take Monster Squad, and Shane Black. I was at this interview where he was talking about how you can only kill a werewolf with a silver bullet. Like, you can explode him, and that won't kill him, and he all comes back together in Monster Squad.
Right,
The
right.
rule is silver bullet. Silver in general.
Right. You
And
can be
it's-
bludgeoned by silver, as
Yes.
proven by this movie.
Which, in the end, isn't bludgeoning just a really slow bullet?
That's true. You're right. In a way, you are exactly correct.
That said,
A slow, large bullet.
yeah, a murder weapon that they just let someone take home and continue to have.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it was a different time in the 1800s.
Is that when this takes place?
I assume so. So full disclosure to you, which I gave you a heads up on, and
did.
the listeners, because I grew up with this movie and I've seen it like 100 times, and it's
only
very,
an hour long.
Yeah, it's very simple. The plot of this movie is extremely simplistic. It's, I think, the most simplistic of all of the Universal monster movies. I decided, because I'd never seen it before, I would watch the Wolfman remake from 2010, starring Benicio del Toro, directed by Joe Johnston of Jumanji and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and The Rocketeer fame. Also read the original script before, because Mark Romanek was supposed to direct it, coming off of 1 Hour Photo, the creepy Robin Williams movie.
Yeah.
I still don't think, I don't know this for sure, but I feel like Romanek still hasn't directed a follow-up to that movie because no one wants to deal with him, because he's very like David Finchery in his like, I need things to be very specific, exactly the way that I want them. And that works for David Fincher because he had a huge hit. But for Romanek, he hasn't had that yet, and so then nobody wants to deal with him.
Maybe people are worried that whatever movie he writes, what industry he writes about next will also come to an end.
I mean, maybe. It's entirely possible.
I hear a Circuit City movie would have been really good.
His version of the movie was written by the writer of Seven. Again, there's that David Fincher connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the writer of Seven wrote the Wolfman script, and then it was rewritten for this Joe Johnston version. He's still credited as one of the writers, but he is not the sole writer anymore. And I believe I read an interview with him where he has never seen the remake because he knows how much they changed his script, and he was like, I just don't even want to see it. So I actually read his script as well, because you can find it out there. And yeah, there is a lot of things in common with it. Like the Venn diagram is about 50%. There's like 50% of what he wrote is still in the movie, and then 50% is completely taken out. A perfect example of that is like the movie starts with this like very sort of is a flashback, and then a scene of like Benicio del Toro in London. He plays an actor in this version, and so he's a stage actor, and he's on stage doing Hamlet, and then he goes backstage, and then Gwen comes and visits him and is like, hey, your brother's missing, you should come home, he's my fiance. And he's like, oh yeah, I always meant to meet you, I don't go home, I don't get along with my family. She's like, you really should, your brother's missing, etc. And he's like, I'll think about it. She leaves, and he thinks about it, and he's like, well, I guess I probably should. And then he goes home. And in the finished movie, they take all of her dialogue that she says to him in the script, and they turn it into a monologue that is a letter that she's writing him. And it opens with the letter that she's writing him in voiceover while he is already traveling to the thing. And so in the script, he arrives home on page like 15, and in the movie it's like minute 3.
Wow.
It's just like they just collapse all of that into a montage, essentially.
The version you were describing is better than the original 1941 movie, where it's all kind of just like random characters and happenstance. Like, it does open with Larry getting home and like seeing his father again after 18 years because his brother died.
Yeah.
In an unrelated way. It's like, I don't even remember like how the brother is like, yeah, it's a shame he had that accident and died. Anyway, how have you been? I haven't seen you in 18 years. And then like the dad discovers that Larry's good with machines, and it's like, cool. And they have this really tense relationship, and they clearly know nothing about each other. And then Larry goes upstairs to the observatory. They turn the attic into observatory, fixes a telescope, uses it to spy on a random woman, and then he tracks her down and like is really creepy and stalky towards her.
Yeah, so this is a good point to point out this bit of werewolf movies, because it's basically like a prerequisite for like all werewolf movies, which is that the werewolfism is some sort of allegory for something else.
Yes. As is the case for many horror movies.
Absolutely, but really with werewolves, it's like every single time. So you got Ginger Snaps, which is like an allegory for like feminism and like women like gaining their sexuality and like not like acting like quote unquote women should, like that's what Ginger Snaps is about. You have this movie, which is in both versions, it's about like, oh, like, every man has an animal inside of them that they can't control. And yeah, so like that's why he's a creep, because it's like an allegory for the werewolf and blah, 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 blah.
And in Teen Wolf, it's about learning to be cool.
Well, it's about puberty, but yeah.
And surfing on cars.
Yeah. It's definitely puberty.
Yeah.
There's a point where he like literally his voice changes. Remember when he's like, give me I want the cake of beer. And he's got the deeper voice all of a sudden.
I don't remember. I watched that years ago. I was like it was like some big group watch at a friend's studio who I haven't talked to that guy in a while. Anyway, like I knew nothing about this movie, and then we go in, and then there's the moment where like the dad knocks on the door. And then we open the door, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but then we see the dad, and I died.
Yeah.
And it clearly was fresh and brand new for me, and no one would there was no one around me I could connect to on the fact that this was the best thing I'd ever seen.
It's such a fun reveal that is, it is so, it's his entire like vibe when the door opens.
It's so good.
It's amazing. It's so good. Yeah.
Incredible stuff.
Yeah. Teen Wolf 2, not so incredible, but that first one, great.
So then fun. What's the metaphor for the original Wolfman? Is it just like everyone has a monster inside them?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's like every man has an animal inside them they can't control, which, sucks, but it was also 1941. So,
yeah. They were all treading new ground. The fact that they got to actually get a camera into a forest, what counts for a forest in film, that's pretty good. We'll let them have it.
Yeah, right. And I think that it's something similar in the Wolfman remake. So in the Wolfman remake, they add this extra layer, which is that Sir John is the werewolf that is stalking everyone and killing villagers, and killed his brother. His brother is killed in the opening moments of the movie, and later you find out that is his out of control father, who was a werewolf because he's a big game hunter, and somebody told him, hey, there's this crazy monster in this cave, and he goes in there and gets attacked by a werewolf and gets bit and becomes a werewolf.
Look, we've all put monsters in caves. It's fine. And if you want to find out more about a monster that someone can put in a cave, I have this script called Stuck that I co-wrote with Harry Valentine, and you end up with a monster in a cave. It's really great. Everyone wants to meet the Rottenness.
His father is played by Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Dope.
A Sir playing a Sir.
Absolutely.
Which is nice. But yeah, the resulting movie is a father versus son thing, where the father is fully accepted his like werewolfism and is like, no, this is like the best life, and Lawrence is like, no, this is awful. This is a curse. You're a monster. Yeah. You're a monster, and I'm going to stop you. And it's sort of it's very like this movie shocked me by how gory it is. It is extremely gory. The remake, a lot of unfortunate CGI. It is Rick Baker's, I believe, final credit as a makeup artist. So he like broke through with American Werewolf in London and then went out with the Wolfman. He was like, it's going to be poetic. And then they replaced a lot of his practical effects with CGI in post.
That sucks. It
really sucks.
Because the practical effects and the makeup in American Werewolf in London is incredible. It's like, it's legendary. It is like almost the top of the game. And like just the transformation sequence in general is, people still aren't sure how it was done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, it's like a father and son thing. So it seems like it is that like every man has an animal inside them, but there's like this extra element of like this artist trying to get away from his family, being dragged back in, and then like, he's like trying to get away from his legacy, and then it's like his legacy, it's very messy. Like it's not very clear, because it's not a great movie. It's better than its reputation, I would say, but it's not great.
It is interesting that they took the characters that existed and then made them more connected. Like I do actually enjoy that part. It's just a shame that some of the execution wasn't as good as you'd potentially hoped it would be.
Right. But I will say, Joe Johnston, like, there's a lot of really cool gothic imagery, like, the Wolfman, like, standing on top of like a rooftop in London and like howling at the moon with the big full moon in the background, like just like really cool stuff like that. Or like the London Bridge, you know, he's like in front of the London Bridge, you know, like it's just there's some really cool like Gothic imagery. And yeah, and it all does take place in the 1890s. Remake does.
For the remake, is the full moon a necessity, or does it just need to be night? Because in the 1941 version, it seems like it just needs to be night.
Yeah, it is the full moon for sure in the remake.
Interesting. So the core plot of the original, I'm just going to breeze through it because it isn't a lot, is that Larry stalks Gwen but ends up taking Gwen and her friend Jenny over to a Romani encampment to get their fortunes told. Jenny goes in first, and the Romani named Bella, who is telling her fortune, sees the pentagram in her palm and knows that she is going to be his next victim. He scares her off, that she goes running. Gwen and Larry are kind of off doing their own thing. And then a wolf, not a wolf man, but a wolf, which I thought was interesting because I'll get to that, chases Jenny down and kills her, but then Larry tries to get in the middle and like he kills the wolf, but the wolf bites him, and then Larry wanders home. In the morning he's fine. We find out that Jenny died and Bella was killed, and basically the rest of the movie is people trying to figure out what's going on, trying to find the animal who did it or the guy who did it, and they're not sure, and they see animal prints, and Larry's coming to terms, and he denies first that he's a wolf man, but then Bella's mother confirms that he's a wolf man and also lays her son to rest. And she tries to protect everybody. Like, honestly, Bella's mom is doing the best she can, but she tries to protect everybody. It doesn't work. Larry ends up seeing the pentagram on Gwen's palm, and he tries to get people to kill him or stop him, and it doesn't work. And he ends up giving his silver cane to his dad, who kills his son in the middle of the forest. Oh my God, what a tragedy. End of movie.
Yeah.
And Gwen, for some reason, continues to be continually drawn to this guy for no explored reason, but because movie.
Yeah. And it's like in and out in like 65 minutes or something, 70 minutes.
Easily.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. And so this one, the remake, his brother is killed. He comes back. He is estranged from his father. You know, there are werewolf killings. He goes to the Romani camp because it was one of the last places where his brother was seen, and they're like, yeah, you're gonna be safe in this camp, don't go into the woods though, because like there's like that's where the creature is. And then the werewolf immediately attacks the camp, and just brutally kills like dozens of Romanis. He goes after this kid who like runs out into the woods, a Romani kid. He like chases after him because he doesn't want this kid to get hurt. He gets attacked by the werewolf, gets bit, but saved by the other villagers. And then they stitch him up. He heals really quickly, turns into a werewolf for the first time, kills a bunch of people, gets loose in London, that sort of thing. And then, you know, he's like, oh no, like this is really scary. This is like really bad. A detective comes into town to like investigate all of this. He thinks that Lawrence is a serial killer who's doing all of this. He's played by Hugh, Mr. Smith from The Matrix. And
Yeah. Oh, no. It's not Hugh.
Oh.
I'm looking it up.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'll keep talking. So he comes into town and starts doing this. He eventually finds him. Gwen is Lawrence's brother, Ben's fiance.
His name is Hugo Weaving. So not Hugo.
Hugo Weaving. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Zach was very mad at us for having forgotten his name. I'm sorry, Zach. Yeah. So
Zach is also a big werewolf guy.
Yes, I know. That's why I know he's listening to this. Yeah. Okay. So he is building like a relationship with Gwen as like, you know, his dead brother's fiance. She runs a shop in town, much like, which I thought was like a fun callback to the original. But I think she owns the shop in this case. He hides out there. They come there, find him, arrest him, take him to a mental institution where they do all of these crazy, like, late 1800s, like scary mental institution torture to him. Mm-hmm. And then they put him into an observation room full of a bunch of doctors. And they're like, look at this insane person. He thinks that he's a werewolf. And we're going to show that he's not a werewolf as like the full moon is rising.
Rises.
And he's like, guys, I'm going to kill every one of you guys in this room. And they're like, see how crazy he is? He is absolutely certifiably insane. And the main doctor is like talking to this room of doctors while behind him, he starts transforming into a werewolf. And they're all starting to like stand up and be like, hold on, stop talking, man. Stop talking. This is real. This is real. And he turns into the werewolf and attacks the whole room of doctors.
I mean, genuinely, that's great.
It's pretty great.
That's really good.
The only thing that sucks about it is that it's just fully CG, like boiling skin, transformation. That's the only thing that sucks about it. But it's a really cool setup for a scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of the time when he is a full-blown wolf man, a lot of that is practical. It's just that like he runs a lot and jumps rooftop to rooftop, and every time that happens, that's CGI. But overall, I'm kind of a fan of the way that they redesigned the Wolfman here, because he doesn't look like a wolf. He looks like a wolf man. He's still wearing his clothes, in the way that he is in the 41 version. So I really do like that.
Is there a reason in the 41 version where Bella's wolf is a wolf versus Larry's wolf is a wolf man?
I think it's a weird thing where he is like Bella is not a werewolf. Bella is like a or Bella. I think that's what it is. I think Bella is a werewolf, but back then the idea of a werewolf was a man who turns into a wolf, but it's like a curse. It's like some kind of like, it's supposed to be like a Romani curse. Like it's almost like a shapeshifter kind of deal. Okay. But like when he bites Larry turns into a wolf man because it's not like a full blown, like that's not how you become a werewolf in this world. He becomes a wolf man. I think it's vaguely, I think that's what the concept is. In this, there is no one who turns into like a full blown wolf. Everyone's just wolf men.
Okay. So like when you see the slaughter at the Romani camp, and the thing that eventually gets the Larry in the remake, right. It is a werewolf. Like
it is a full-blown werewolf. Yeah.
Got it.
Wolf man, werewolf.
My headcanon was that, like, as you have had the curse longer and longer and longer, you become more wolf-like and less man-like.
That's a cool idea, too. I like that, too. Yeah, so, skip to the end. He finds out that his dad is the werewolf that has been terrorizing London and their surrounding town, and he's fully accepted that he's a werewolf now, and he's like, actually, you're stupid for not enjoying this. Like, this is your family legacy. All, very Anthony Hopkins stuff.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins turns into a werewolf. He turns into a werewolf. They fight. They set their mansion on fire, and then Gwen runs away with a gun, loaded with a silver bullet, not wanting to kill him, but then the Wolfman attacks her, and she's forced to shoot him through the heart with the silver bullet. He turns back into Benicio del Toro. He's like, "Thanks, babe," and then dies. And then that's
great.
That's the end of the movie. But in the struggle toward the end,
he scratches her.
Yeah, no, he attacks Hugo Weaving. And Hugo Weaving now has the curse of the werewolf and looks up at the moon ominously, knowing what's coming in 30 days for him. And that's how the movie ends. So
got it.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, it sounds like it's like they genuinely tried to make a cool and interesting take on the original while also modernizing it and changing it a little bit and putting it fully in London. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit before we started that my version. So I think you have a more in-depth, complex idea, and I think I have a much simpler, one simple change, and it changes the whole movie.
Okay.
So what I was going to suggest is let me take you through my really simple version, and then I'd really love to hear your much more well thought out version.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Let's see.
Yeah. Basically, one of the things that really I found interesting and disappointing in the original movie is that there's a moment when Jenny's family comes in to the shop and Gwen's dad won't let them see her, and they come in, they're like, "What did you do? My daughter is dead. How could you let this happen? Where were you and this Larry guy? What is going on?" And then Larry comes in and kind of threatens them, and they leave because they're scared of him. And Larry goes, what was their deal? And the dad's like, nah, it doesn't matter. And it's like, their daughter is dead. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So specifically within this world, and honestly our world, I started my take, because all monster movies have to like shine a light on some aspect of humanity, and it is how rarely we believe women. And I think that matters. So my tiny twist is that when we get to the point of the wolf attacking, Larry and Gwen were already walking Jenny home. And so when the wolf attacks, Larry gets in the way, and the wolf kills Larry, but only bites Gwen.
Oh.
So Larry's the one who is killed, and then we have Gwen and Jenny, who kind of are the two people who know what happened. And as we move through the movie, Gwen is now the werewolf, or I'm sorry, the wolf man, and both she and Jenny are kind of being like, no, you guys don't understand. This is what happened. Like, it was really scary. And they're like, sure it is, sweetheart. Don't worry about it. We'll find the actual monsters who did it. You're hysterical. And it's like, and like they actively know that Cassandra symptoms, like they know what's going on, and people do not believe them, to the point where as we get later in the movie, Jenny starts taking their side of being like, well, maybe they're right. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe it, like, we're repressed and we saw something that wasn't there. And Gwen's like, no, you don't understand. I'm a werewolf. Like, of course that's what happened. Mm-hmm. And now we have Sir John Talbot, who instead of being someone, a mother worried about her daughter, it's a man worried about his son. He will not rest until he finds the man who killed his other child.
Yeah.
And it is like the ultimate just like affluent white man just bearing down on this town, being like, I will disrupt everything to find out who killed my son.
Yeah.
And Gwen's like, it's me. I did it. You guys got to stop me. I'm dangerous. And they're like, no, because women can't be dangerous. I have to find out the man who killed my son.
Uh-huh.
And as we get to the end of this movie, until finally the big showdown, is the fiance, Frank Andrews, whomever else is there to finally like, oh my God, this monster has torn through the entire town. And they finally end up taking down the werewolf. And then they realize, oh my God, it was Gwen and she was telling us the truth the whole time. And that's the movie.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I just think that's a different werewolf movie. Like, I don't think that's the Wolfman.
Probably not. Like I said, it's a single change within the world that exists.
Yeah. When are you picturing this taking place? What's the setting?
I don't know. That was something I was having a hard time leaning on, because in my head, this is 1941, and I was still thinking this was a contemporary movie, but it sounds like it wasn't necessarily.
I don't know. It's hard to tell. I know the old, obviously the remake definitely takes place in like 1891. Right. They flash it on screen. I'm not sure if the Wolfman is contemporary or not.
My guess is that it was, simply because like there are horse-drawn carriages, but I feel like there was also a car.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like looking at Gwen's clothes, and they do seem, and Larry's clothes do seem modern. So you might be right. Oh yeah, and of course he meets the Abbott and Costello later. So yeah, he has to be modern.
There you go. I missed that, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's not in that movie, but you know, it's Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Larry is in that movie.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah, he's still alive for some reason in the Abbott and Costello version.
Well,
and still cursed. Still same actor, Lon Chaney Jr. Yeah,
good for him.
Same deal. You would probably love that movie.
I genuinely probably would.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that much Abbott and Costello. Like Abbott and Costello is like a big gap in my like. I should genuinely watch it.
Yeah, that one's. You should watch that this spooky season. I think because it's probably the best Abbott and Costello. If you're gonna watch one, that's probably the best one.
Abbott and Costello meet the Wolfman.
Meet Frankenstein.
Oh, that's the best one.
Yeah. Well, no, but the Wolfman is in it, and so is Dracula. It's like.
Oh.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
It's like the original Monster Squad.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have written 2 very different scripts where Frankenstein is the lead, so go figure.
Yeah.
And if you want them, I can now offer them to you. Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
That was the rule of 3. You can't bring it up again.
That's true. But yeah, so like in my head, our version of the remake, like in my head, it's hard to do a Wolfman in like a big city. It sounds like the 2010 version tried, but it's still like old-timey London. Mm-hmm. And like American Werewolf in London does big city werewolf. Like there's that moment in the subway with the werewolf that is genuinely terrifying, and you get to see, and then you kind of get to like finally get your full view of the werewolf as it emerges up down these stairs of the subway, and it's really terrifying. For my version, it like the thing that I just pitched, it kind of feels like it needs to be small town, ye olde times, 1941, 1950 kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was something I kind of just needed to get out, but I am interested in hearing your pitch and kind of what a true remake should be. Because we kind of talked about doing this movie as a reimagining of The Wolfman.
Right. So I wanted to do a modern take. I wanted to do something modern day, sort of like the Invisible Man remake that came out just before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I know that they are toying with doing another remake of The Wolfman in that style. We don't really know anything about it, but Ryan Gosling is supposedly starring in it.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know. But it's supposed to be like a modern reimagining in the same fashion as the Invisible Man. My version of this sort of came down to this. So here's a few things. So what are the necessary elements of what I consider a successful Wolfman remake? And I feel like there needs to be family drama that is kicked off with a death in the family. I think that the iconography of the silver wolf cane and the pentagram on the palm needs to continue. I think there needs to be Romani involvement in some fashion.
I agree.
And I think generally speaking, there needs to be a romance, because I think in order to make a true Gothic something, there needs to be some sort of tragic romance. So I think tragic romance is also something that I would like to see as part of this. So those are all the elements. And so I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the allegory thing. And I was like, what is a new allegory? Which I love your allegory. I think that's a really interesting take on a female werewolf story as an allegory. I think that's really good. My slight twist on what the Wolfman does, because like what the Wolfman is like every man has an animal inside of him that he can't control. You know, he does manly things and animalistic things because, you know, men can't control themselves, like that whole thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so my line of dialogue that I wrote that sort of like states the theme is someone telling Lawrence, every man has an animal inside them. The only question is what it will take to bring it out. And my feeling on that is like you can take that in a lot of different ways, right? For some guys, it's just temptation. And that's all it takes for their animal to come out, right?
Yeah.
And they like go on murder sprees or whatever nightmare shit that men do, right? And then there's other men who seem like perfectly fine, you know, fathers and whatever. But if their kid is in danger, the animal comes out, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea for me was like playing with that concept of like not making it specifically about like animalistic tendencies, but more of like what would make a man become violent, and different kinds of men. That threshold is completely different places, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And so I wanted to sort of explore that. And to me, exploring that brought me to a story about a family of cops. And that Larry is the one who is not a cop. And he has stepped away from this family of cops because he's like, I don't want any part of that. You know, that's not something that I'm interested in. I want to be an artist. You know, I want to be, in my version, I am cribbing a little bit from the remake and making him an actor, but I'm not making him a successful actor. I'm making him a starving, struggling actor that has never made it.
Very relatable.
Right. But it's always coming back to his rich family and asking for money to like keep going. Right.
So not estranged for 18 years, but estranged enough.
Estranged in a like eye rolling, like, oh God, like, you know, why don't you just become a cop like your brother or like your father was, you know?
Got it.
And I picture the mother is not dead in this. She, you know, she's alive and she is the matriarch of the family and is where all of their money comes from. Like she was like born wealthy and married a cop who became like a detective and then maybe like a captain and then eventually retired, right? So he's retired now, and his brother Ben is killed in action, and you just think that he was killed in a normal police thing. You later find out that he was killed by a werewolf, right? Mm-hmm. And so he comes home. To me, this is a story about a guy who never wanted to become a police officer because he sees how violent it made his father growing up. Maybe his father was even abusive growing up, and he doesn't like the power dynamics of that. Mm-hmm. And it's combined with the fact that like his dad was a cop and could kind of get away with whatever he wanted, but also his mother was rich. So they were like wealthy and in control of the police force in this town. And so it's not great. And he didn't like any of that. But to them, the line, so I was picturing like his father telling him this line of like, every man has an animal inside of him. It's just what's going to bring it out. And what he's saying is like, as a police officer, sometimes I got to let that out. I got to let that out and I got to do what needs to get done. And you would have been able to too, if you'd stop being such a wuss and become a cop like the rest of your family, like your brother, who I'm proud of, as opposed to you stupid starving artist.
I respect a man who's willing to get in touch with his inner animal, but you've buried it down.
Right,
You're so far away from what makes you a real man.
Right, that kind of thing, exactly. And so when he gets attacked by the werewolf, I really do want to lean into his father being the red herring.
Okay.
To me, what this is, so I also brought in the detective that was played by Hugo Weaving into this character named Freddie Aberline is that the name of that character. So I brought them in. I made that character be Ben's ex-partner. Like that was like
Ben, the brother.
The brother, right? So they were partners, and then Ben was killed in action, and so now he's like, it's almost like his wife, his work wife. You know what I mean? Like that kind of. Yeah. It's almost like a widow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when. To me, so like then Gwen is also like, I think just an old flame that he had like in high school that like when he left town, she never left and just stayed a townie. And so there's a pre-existing relationship there. So he's not just like stalking some random girl. It's more like a reconnection kind of thing. Yeah, and I am picturing this being in like a small-ish town, not like a big city, like a medium-sized sort of like suburban area with affluent areas of town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like a Calabasas.
Yeah, something like that. Sure. Yeah. For those of you listening who don't know what Calabasas is, it's a medium-sized town.
Yeah, with some really affluent people who live around there, but also those really affluent people employ some not as affluent people to work for them.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you want to go ride horses, it's a place to be.
That's true. That is true. So yeah, to me, this is a story about a guy an artistic guy who tried to leave his hometown and leave the legacy of this stuff that makes him super uncomfortable about his family, only to return and become a werewolf and feel the guilt that he's always felt with that. The way that I wanted this to, I guess, conclude is that the werewolf that's loose in town is Ben's ex-partner. They killed Ben as a werewolf, and also his father always knew that there was werewolves, and it always becomes a time where they have to kill the werewolf, but it comes from his mother's side of the family, the sort of like affluent side of like, they've always had this thing that they can control, and it's been the police, and it's been these werewolves, and they use the werewolves to kill people they don't like, things that they're not, getting away with certain things, political rivals, that sort of thing. And that's the use of them, and the cops cover it up.
If there's one thing about Calabasas that I can't stand, it's all the damn werewolves.
Exactly. But there's not like a ton of werewolves. There's usually only like one or two at a time, and a lot of them have been cops in the past. And so that's sort of the idea. And,
I think it's a good idea, because I think it's certainly a way to speak to issues that are currently going on now, where a lot of the cops just serve the interests of the very wealthy, and the very wealthy know that they're monsters, but they're their monsters that they kind of point in a direction to go take care of their problems and bust up whatever unions they want. I mean, problems that they want.
Exactly. And the ultimate, I think, ending of this, because you have, it has to end in a tragedy. It is the wolf,
of course,
right? So Lawrence is killed, but in doing so, he is killed publicly out in the open in a way that basically like reveals his family for what they really are, and they lose all of their power in that moment. So while it is a tragedy that Lawrence is killed, his family like loses all of their power in the process, and he does kill the other werewolf, and now there are no werewolves left. So yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking.
So it's a reversal of certainly the 1941 version, where everyone in town is super suspectful and mistrusting of Larry. So in your version, your pitch is that no one is suspecting because they're we love this family.
Right.
They're the family that represents this town. They're the backbone of this town. Right. And they're like, it's, oh man, did you hear about Ben? It's so sad. Oh my gosh, it's a good thing Larry's back. Larry will help us.
Right.
And then finally get to the end of the movie, and it just, Larry dying publicly is a tragedy, and it also shakes the confidence of absolutely everyone in this town to the point where, the backbone of this town
right
has never served the town.
Exactly. And so,
I mean, it's a kind of tragedy.
And I also think that
it's a tragedy for Larry.
Yeah. I also think that the werewolf idea is that like no one knows that it's a werewolf. They think it's a serial killer. Because the cops are covering it up, actively covering up the werewolf of it all. I even was thinking like at one point somebody does see the werewolf and is like, that was a werewolf. And the cops are like, just kill them. Mm-hmm. Kill the witness. And just like, okay, serial killer. We're going to continue saying that it's a serial killer or whatever. And so when he comes out in the open, it is just like so shocking to everyone. And it should be like very obvious that his family and the police were the ones who were covering up the fact that there was a werewolf loose in this town.
I have two questions.
Yes.
One, did you say when you want to set this?
Modern day.
You do want to make it modern day. Okay.
Yeah.
And then two, which I agree with. And then two, I mean, every good serial killer has a name.
Oh, that's true. Well, so here's the thing. I wanted to, instead of the palm pentagram being a vision, I wanted to literalize it, and that to cover up the fact that there is a werewolf. They are, I forgot the whole Romani angle on this. So there is a Romani family that everyone is suspicious of and creeped out by. They don't bother anybody, but they just, they look like shady characters.
I mean, if we want to build up, we can just say the Romani area of town.
Sure, the Romani area of town.
It's a small little community,
and so they want everyone to think that the serial killer is one of these Romani people from this Romani side of town, which is like the poor side of town. And so, in Romani culture, there is a lot of use of pentagrams, but pentagrams are protection. They protect you from evil, which is why they're always used in like around evil. And idiots just started assuming that they themselves were evil pentagrams, but they're not. They're protection from it. Which is why they're always associated. And so when a werewolf killing happens, the cops cover it up by carving a pentagram into the palm of the victim. And they call them the pentagram killer.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's great. So Larry will go to the Romani part of town just because he's trying to find a gift for Gwen, and that's where he'll find his silver-topped cane.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I think that really works.
Especially because if he's an artist and if he's an actor, he'll probably have a lot more in common and like want to go to the Romani part of town just for the sake of it's cheaper. He feels more at home in that community than he does in his quote unquote own community.
Yeah, and maybe Gwen's shop is in the Romani side of town.
Yeah.
And that's where he runs into her. I was also thinking that like maybe at one point he does like protect somebody in that part of town, and like as a thank you they give him the cane, or something like that as like a gift, because it does feel, the cane just feels so old fashioned. And you're right, he is an actor, and so like, you know, it's useful to a certain extent, but I don't know.
You know what I would like instead? What I would like instead is because I'm presuming that this is going to open with someone being killed, like a Jenny or someone else being killed.
Yeah.
And Larry doing his best to fend off the other werewolf. Like, he might even kill Ben's former partner, the other cop.
Uh-huh.
And I think in the same way, like, if the cop is who turns out to be the other werewolf and not Bella, I think it's likely going to be that they're going to kill Bella. But Larry tried to stop it, whether successfully or unsuccessfully. And Bella's mom will have to take this Bella's cane and give it to Larry. As a, you may have succeeded, you may have failed. You can decide for protecting my son, but you tried, and so many other people haven't. Please take this. It belonged to my son. Maybe who the next person you try to save, this will actually help you protect them.
I think that's really good, because I think it makes sense that they would be setting loose the cop werewolf into the Romani side of town for like some political reason. Maybe there's a Romani incumbent, you know, for the mayoral race or something like that. They're like they want the werewolf to attack his place of like his headquarters or whatever, you know, something like that.
I mean, the Romani area of town is the murder capital of that part of town.
Right. And everyone is like, oh, well, see, they're not safe. They shouldn't be, they shouldn't have any power, but really they're the ones doing it.
You could also really lean into the whole NIMBY thing of it all, of being like, well, of course they need a place to live. That's reasonable. That just shouldn't be in our town.
Right. Totally. Yes. Absolutely. That's absolutely like the vibe for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. That totally works. We need some sort of cool werewolf iconography. Mm-hmm. What would you like it to be?
Ooh. So I've thought a lot about the werewolf transformation and like how I would do it. Because the problem is that like a lot of things have been done before, and you know, we've seen the limbs like stretching and bones breaking version, right? And you can't really get any better than what we've got of that. Mm-hmm. We've seen the guy ripping his skin off to reveal the werewolf underneath the skin. That was in like Van Helsing and a few other iterations as well. Trick or Treat, notably.
Believe you.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
I believe you.
Yeah. So that's the thing where like they rip off, they like their skin like starts like boiling, and then they rip it off and the werewolf is underneath the skin. And then when they transfer back into the human, the werewolf rips off the werewolf skin, and then there's a human underneath. And so it's just like layers of, not my favorite version of that. So what I was thinking was like, how would I shoot a werewolf transformation? And what I pictured was a practical transformation that is shot very quickly, where you build a rig that is a sort of like animatronic human that transforms into a werewolf. But you don't need to get super detailed into it, because what I'm picturing is it's shot practically, but in silhouette against the moonlight. And so
Ooh, that's very good.
It's practical and it's happening in front of your eyes, but you don't have to like really get in there and see the detail, because it's more just like he howls and then it's just like a werewolf. It's just like it just transforms into a werewolf, and it's all practical effects, but it's something I've never seen before and I think could be really cool.
I like that. I like that for Larry's transformation. I'm going to pitch, what was Ben's partner's name? The cop?
Freddy.
My pitch for a Freddy transformation, especially because Freddy probably knows and enjoys the fact that he's a werewolf, like he leans into the monster inside. My pitch is just the grin that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the face comes forward.
Oh, I like that. That's cool. That's a little Big Bad Wolf kind of vibes.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool. I like that.
And that way you get to focus on that, and you get to see it all happens in the face, and you're so focused on what's happening to the face that by the time you realize that there's like the rest of the body's already transformed, and you missed it just because you were so focused on this little area.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. No, I like that.
Cool. Yeah. That's all I had in terms of plot. Shall we talk about casting?
Yeah, sure. I will say I definitely want a scene where they arrest Larry and he's in a jail cell, and is turning into a werewolf and like just wreaks havoc on the entire police station.
Oh, for sure.
I just think that would be killer.
That'd be amazing. I also like the idea of that, especially if they're aware of werewolves, like they put him in a place where he wouldn't be able to see a full moon, and you can literally have Gwen bring him a picture or something, and he's able to figure out a way to get hold the picture up and reflect off the glass the image of the full moon so that he can transform.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I always just pictured like the full moon light isn't necessary. It's just like the fact that there is a full moon happening is what it is. But I also don't know if they would. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they would know that he was a werewolf or not.
I think that they are just aware of werewolves.
Right.
So they have set things up so that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, that's good. I like that.
Not that they know that he is necessarily. It's just that they know that they exist because they've been covering it up for so long.
Right. All right, let's get into casting.
Cool. My casting is obviously based around my pitch. So a couple of mine I just know right now I'm not going to get. But obviously we have to start with Larry.
Sure.
And so you want someone who can be and seems very diminutive and potentially would but deep down can harbor a terrible monster. And that's why for my kind of like Larry figure, the person who obviously seemed to need to be that character is Jesse Plemons. Which, I talked about 2 episodes ago.
Right. That's true. No, and that's really good. He has a very similar vibe to Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he just has that. Because, like, Lon Chaney Jr., that's the thing that's so crazy about that movie is that Lon Chaney Jr. he's not, like, loaded with charisma. Like, he's a very, soft-spoken kind of character in that movie.
It's also crazy because he goes home and there's a portrait of him over the fireplace. And he's like, yeah, shame about I'm so sorry, Dad, about you losing your other child. Yeah. And he's like, yeah. And then, but clearly they looked exactly alike.
Yeah. Weird. No, that is good. That is a really good Larry. Although I think that is definitely a Larry. I also wanted to play with the idea that like he calls himself Lawrence Talbot as an actor, but as he goes home, everyone calls him Larry.
Yeah.
Just because like that's who they all know him as from when he was a kid.
Yeah, it sure would be a shame if you lived a life where whenever you went back to your hometown, everyone referred to you by a name that is different from the name that everyone calls you in LA. And if you're listening, people in Tucson, I'm calling you out specifically.
That's good. And that comes from someone whose first name is actually legally Lawrence, and I do hate it when people call me Larry. So, but I don't like it when they call me Lawrence either. So it's there you go. But I wanted to choose somebody who I guess I think would be able to hold this movie and not just like theoretically in terms of like, oh yeah, of course, like, Jesse Plemons, he's great. Of course he could lead a movie. But
yeah, to be fair, I was planning on killing him.
That's very true. Very true. Fair enough. So I wanted to like a leading actor kind of guy. I also, I'm very uncomfortable in general with the idea of like anyone, like any POC, like being a werewolf, because it's just very like animal. I don't know. There's weird stuff happening there.
There's bad optics.
Yeah, very bad optics. And with this being a cop story, I was like, nah, they're going to be white. Yeah. So I went with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, fair.
I think would wreck being a werewolf.
I mean, the only thing you have to there's 2 different versions of Jake Gyllenhaal. There's the charismatic, wins everyone to his side Jake Gyllenhaal who played Mysterio. Mm-hmm. And then there's Nightcrawler Jake Gyllenhaal. Right. Like, obviously, you want him to be, like, Mysterio Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, right. Much more, like, affable, so that it's that much more shocking when he is turning into a werewolf.
Jake Gyllenhaal, who everyone looks at and goes, yeah, you're one of the most attractive men we've ever seen in our entire life.
Yes. Right, exactly.
But clearly you have a background of some money as well. We understand this.
Yeah, and just in general, like I'm thinking about him performing like a werewolf transformation, and I'm like that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
I think he'd be pretty good at that.
The only downside to Jake Gyllenhaal is ever even once considering the fact that he might not be instantly successful as an actor.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but he is probably the right call.
Yeah. All right. So who's next on your list?
I mean, I feel like the next person we should talk about is Gwen.
Okay.
I'm going to go first again, just because I know we're not going to be getting this particular actress, because I wanted an actress who would be my Wolfman. Oh. And I wanted someone who is terrifying on her own and could do like the guttural deep roar of a werewolf. And there are so few actresses who you kind of already know could do that. And I thought it'd be fun to make it Michelle Rodriguez.
Oh my God. So that's so funny because I cast Michelle Rodriguez as Freddy. So
great.
We both thought the same thing. So there we go. We still got Michelle Rodriguez in this thing.
I mean, absolutely. When we get to Freddy, we'll have a conversation. But yeah, obviously, like, because you want the fear. You want someone who, like, on their own is scary, and then they get this extra layer. Yeah. Forget it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's exactly what I was thinking when I cast her as Freddy. So there you go.
There you go.
So my Gwen is obviously like she's the shop owner, and I was like thinking about. I'm always like very, very much thinking about like age appropriateness as well in terms of casting, and I didn't want to cast anyone too big in this because at the end of the day I want her to be very involved in this and being Larry's sort of sounding board throughout this movie. I wanted somebody really cool that you would be like, oh yeah, like if I saw her, like I'd be like, yeah, this she seems pretty cool. I would want to have chemistry with her too.
Yeah.
So I went with Ruth Negga.
Oh yeah, Ruth Negga's amazing.
Yeah, Ruth Negga's amazing, and I just feel like, oh yeah, Ruth Negga and Jake Gyllenhaal. That's a movie I want to watch. I want to watch those two fall in love, and have a tragic love story.
Yeah, I have cast Ruth Negga a number of times, and it's always fun having people like discover who this actress is, because obviously you and I probably both saw her for the first time in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And
yep.
she is such a nuanced, interesting performance. She gives such a nuanced, interesting performance, and she can alter it based on the character. And she's a phenomenal actress, and I'm always happy to go with Ruth Negga.
Yeah, Ruth Negga is great. So she's my Gwen.
Great. That brings us to Sir John Talbot.
Yeah.
I will have you go first at long last, since now I have actors who we can actually get.
So I for John, I wanted somebody who felt like a retired cop, and also somebody who would believably be Jake Gyllenhaal's father. So I went with Willem Dafoe.
Fair.
They both have that like cut glass cheekbone sort of like facial structure, and so like them standing next to each other, I'm like, yeah, I'd buy them as father and son for sure.
Yeah. So I actually, Willem Dafoe kind of fits this, especially because he's a supervillain. Mm-hmm. But I kind of wanted someone who is intimidating in his own right, but for a different reason. Okay. Again, I was thinking of him as kind of being the true villain of the movie, certainly in the version that I pitched.
Right.
Because he's the one that will tear the town apart in order to get the thing that he wants.
Right.
This is an actor who is not as well known. He's certainly not A-list. I don't know anybody who would necessarily recognize him on the face of it, but he was in 300. He was in the most recent Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. He was in Snow White and the Huntsman. He's a big, intimidating guy, but he is on the older side. His name is Vincent Regan.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I recognize this guy. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with going with Vincent Regan for this. He definitely looks like a guy who is like a retired cop for sure.
Yeah, and never lets himself slip, because like, why would he ever let himself ever be less of a man? Right.
And I would definitely buy him as well as like sort of neutered in the way that like he's retired, and now his wife, who has always been sort of like the more powerful of the two, is now fully in control, because he's not even like a police captain anymore. And so there's he's got a little bit of like a bummed out streak about him of like, oh, my life is basically over.
He's the attack dog, but the attack dog's not in charge. It always serves the higher master.
Right.
Which, of course, is a character I don't have. So what's the name of the mom?
So it was there. I don't think there was ever a mention of the mom in the original film. In the remake, his mom is killed in an early flashback by his father. It's when he like makes the connection so like obviously in that movie, the Wolfman is being played by Benicio del Toro. So they cast, The weird thing about that is like he's Benicio del Toro, but he's not playing Latin in the movie. He's playing half Indian because it's British. It's British, and so it's like a. They're like, oh yeah, like that's what a mixed race person is back then.
But there's still Romani people in the movie.
Yeah.
Because we'll get to this in a minute, but like when I was going through and trying to cast Romani actors to play Bella and Bella's mom,
which is tough because there's not a lot of notable Romani actors, unfortunately.
Right. And so what I did was I looked up the origins of Romani culture, and it is, I can't even think of the term I want for like wandering, but like a lot of traced to northern India. So I cast Indian actors for both Bella and Bella's mom.
Oh.
Specifically for the reason of, or I guess I did an Indian actor for Bella, and I think Pakistani for his mom. I'm not 100% positive, but like from that area of the world, because that's kind of like you trace Romani culture back, and that's kind of where it originated. So the idea of casting an Indian actor as separate from, I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is weird. But yeah, so I just made up a first name. I'm calling her Sandra Talbot, which sounds like a matriarch to me. I cast Alex Kingston, who is 60 years old. She is most well known as one of the doctors on ER and also River Song on Doctor Who.
Great.
Yeah.
Good choice. Obviously, we'll go with her. Cool. So there's a decent chance you didn't cast Jenny. Obviously, she was important for mine.
Mm-hmm. No, I did not. So go ahead. Whoever your Jenny is, that's who she is.
My Jenny, I wanted someone who, like, good friend energy, and obviously, like, you hate to see her go. And in my version, like, you think that this character is going to be killed, and then it turns out she's not, because it's the twist, the reverse.
Right.
And so I went with Melissa Fumero.
Oh yeah.
The love interest from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm forgetting her character's name.
Right. No, that's great.
She's also in the new Blockbuster. But like for my version, like I wanted to give her the more meaty character of like, yeah, it's great. Everything's going to be fine forever. And like, oh, girl, you're going to die. And then she doesn't. And it's like, how do you deal with this character in a world where a horrible, horrible thing happened and like she had like that part of like she didn't die, but she got to witness this horrible thing and it's like slowly eating at her from the inside out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought Melissa Fumero would be good for that role.
No, that's good. I like that.
And it's important for Gwen to have somebody to talk to that isn't just the one male lead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's good.
So then I have Bella, Frank Andrews, Gwen's fiance, who I'm guessing we may or may not have, the cop, and then Bella's mom. Who else do you have?
I just have Freddie, who I already said was Michelle Rodriguez, and then I have Ben Talbot. Because I want you to look this guy up because you probably won't know him by name. His name is Oliver Jackson Cohen. Look at this guy and tell me that he should not be playing Jake Gyllenhaal's brother.
Oliver Jackson Cohen.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm just going to write down Ben Oliver Jackson Cohen.
Yeah.
Man. It's going to be weird if he ever gets put in a room with Maggie.
I know. Very weird.
That's very funny.
But yeah, he's from most notably from Haunting of Hill House. He is a great actor. Really like him a lot. So
great.
Yeah.
So then let's talk about Bella. My Bella, because as I said, I pulled my Bella and Bella's mom from that area of the world. For Bella, I wanted someone who could play scared and is really good at being scared, both of what, in my version, what he is, like of the own monster inside of him, and what potentially could happen to him. And in your version, this Romani character isn't the werewolf, but I still think that fear is relevant, and like you can mask the fear with humor, but it is masking fear, and this character plays that very well. Like, obviously, he's in Miracle Workers, he's in Across the Spider-Verse, he's in Deadpool. It's Karen Sony.
Okay. So you went with a younger Bella.
I mean, I think he's mid to late 30s, but yes, if you're having
that's younger than Bela Lugosi was.
He is, but Bela Lugosi was what, 60 years old, and his mom's supposed to be 80?
Yeah, something like that. Well, I mean, that's not Especially back then. I mean, 20 years old
It's
having
not.
a kid. Yeah.
I went with like a 30-something Bella and like a 50-something Bella's mom.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's cool. I've never seen him be in a non-comedy before.
That's true.
So I would be interested in seeing that. So in my mind, Bella is the person they're trying to pin these murders on. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to cast somebody that was like a little like a little too obvious of a shady character, of like someone that you would try and pin a murder on. And I looked up like all of these different actors. Now, full disclosure, I don't know. I've seen the movie The Losers, which he is apparently in. So I've obviously seen this guy perform before. I'm not super familiar with him. I'm going to send you a message with his name because you're not going to know how to spell it. It's Oscar Hanada is his name. He is a Spanish actor of Romani descent. But you look at this guy and you'd be like, oh yeah, the cops would totally want to pin something on him.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. I was like,
he's better.
Yeah. He just has like those vibes of like, you know, he's the kind of character actor that probably gets cast as like serial killers a lot, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He seems like a cool guy.
Yeah, he seems like a cool guy. He seems like a happy-go-lucky, like pretty cool guy. So
I get cast as serial killers a lot, but I get it work. That's fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good choice. I like that. Well, let's talk about Bella's mom.
Yeah.
I cast an actress who very often plays Pakistani mothers.
Yeah. Maleva is her name.
Maleva. Thank you. She's in The Affair, but you and I both know her from Miss Marvel and the Big Sick. Her name is Zenobia Shroff. She's Miss Marvel's mom.
Oh.
She's a little bit too young to be Oscar Haneda's mother, but I bet we could age her up.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love that. She's, she's kind of perfect for those vibes. That's awesome.
Yeah. Did you cast someone for that role?
No.
Okay, great. Then I'm just going to put a star right here.
Yeah, for sure.
Then so in my version, we still have the fiance because Gwen has a life outside of the fact that Larry randomly comes back to town. Like, she has history with Larry, but like she still has a life that she is currently leading. And so like I was like, yeah, a fiance makes sense.
Sure.
And I even liked the fiance in the 1941 version where he's like, yeah, I trust you. Like, I'm in love with you. Like, I trust you. Like, if you have this friendship, like, that's great. I'm not jealous. And that's fine. Like, we obviously the nature of the movie is a little bit bad, but like, great. It's just a fully trusting fiance. And so like, I know you don't have this character, but I wanted someone who just an interesting character, like can play fun, but it can also play serious and like, cause is obviously going to be a part of this investigation. And theoretically in your version could be another cop. I went with an actor named Ismail Saheed. Ismail Saheed, you will have seen in Jury Duty. You probably won't have seen him in That Girl Lele, but you will have heard him in My Adventures with Superman because he voices Jimmy Olsen.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I was just like randomly scrolling through just to seeing who inspired me and who I thought was interesting. And I was like, oh, Jimmy Olsen, My Adventures with Superman. Who played him? Oh, Ismail Saheed. Oh my God, he's this guy. He's that guy from Jury Duty? He's so good. Yeah.
How old is he?
I don't know.
I have no idea. I can't tell by looking at him. He could be anywhere between the ages of 25 and 45 based on his look.
He is 37.
37. Great. Perfect. Yeah, no, I mean, I have no issue. Oh, well, so here's what I will pitch. It's like, I say we do bring him in, but I think we make him Jenny's fiance. And we make Gwen like a third wheel on their thing. Maybe she's just fresh out of a breakup of some sort.
Great. Love it.
Yeah.
That works for me.
Cool.
I just wrote the fiance. I didn't say whose.
There you go.
And then, so we already know that your Freddy is Michelle Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. My pitch for Freddy was an actor named Omari Hardwick.
Omari, what's his last name? Hardwick?
Hardwick.
Omari
Yeah.
Hardwick.
He's in Kick-Ass. He's in Sorry to Bother You. He's in Army of the Dead. He's in Power.
Oh, yeah. I guess he's like the lead on that Power show.
Yeah. When I was casting him, I wasn't thinking of him as someone turning into a werewolf. So I obviously think Michelle Rodriguez turning into a werewolf sounds amazing. Like, that's great.
Sure.
So like, I'm absolutely all about Michelle Rodriguez playing this role. But
yeah. Okay, great.
I wanted to mention his name.
Great.
Did you have any other actor roles, or are we ready to move on to writer-director?
Let's move on to writer-director.
Great. Do you have a hyphenate or two separate people?
So I have a hyphenate, but I also have two separate people, not because I want them both, but because I don't want my hyphenate broken up. So if we don't want to go with the hyphenate, then I've got a writer and a director that we can, break apart or whatever the options are.
Normally when people bring a hyphenate, I'm like, great, and we will put them in this position or that position.
Yeah.
But like, so for the purposes of whatever, tell me about who your hyphenate is and why they're the best to both write and direct this movie.
To me, I want Rian Johnson.
Yeah, fair.
Because I've never seen him do horror before. I think he would just absolutely wreck house doing a werewolf movie. And also with all the thematics and stuff that we're playing around with, he is notably so good at that in the Knives Out movies, playing in that world. And I think that he would do a really good job with like building up this world and sort of adding a almost like a noir level to the Gothic stuff. And I just think he would be really good at like bringing this to the modern day.
I actually had considered Rian Johnson, and specifically not because of the Knives Out movies, but because of Poker Face.
Yeah,
but
sure.
you actually can take them both kind of in two hands and say he can write about the affluence of the Knives Out movies and the poverty of the Poker Face show.
Yep.
Because it's where those two things come together is where this movie lives.
Absolutely.
I ended up going with someone else because, specifically for my version, I wanted a female director. Like,
sure.
If we're going to have a female lead, we want to be able to play with it, and we wanted to make it not sexy werewolf. I wanted a female director.
Naturally.
So we'll have Rian Johnson as writer-director in the back of our heads. Let's talk about who you had as your sole writer.
I went with a writer by the name of Nick Antosca. Nick Antosca he's a pretty successful TV writer, but he specifically wrote this series called Channel Zero for Sci-Fi Channel, which were like it was a 4-season anthology series where each season was an adaptation of a creepypasta story, and it is truly one of the scariest horror television series I've ever watched. In a TV doesn't tend to be like as scary to me as movies in general, but Channel Zero was creepy as hell, and I think that's largely due in part to him. And so I would be like, I would be curious what this guy would do with a werewolf movie.
I realized as soon as I asked you that I made a mistake, because I literally went with my writer to say, like, here's my writer, and now tell me who we're actually going with. And I realized I did that backwards.
Oh.
Because I had this whole thing where I was going to go, oh, great. So let me tell you about my writer. My writer is kind of the obvious choice. He's so obvious that he's currently working on both Bride of Frankenstein and Creature from the Black Lagoon. And we know that because he wrote The Mummy from 2017, but he's also a Star Trek writer, so he knows how to handle the big things, and he wrote, like, Sleepy Hollow is, like, the big thing with his name on it, and that's Alex Kurtzman.
Yeah, Alex Kurtzman.
Like, Alex Kurtzman is the obvious one that will be gone. Like, if they're doing this, like, he'll probably be asked if he hasn't been asked already.
Right.
But I brought him in specifically so we could be like, he's the obvious choice. Who should we actually go with if we want this to be ideal and not the...
Alex Kurtzman...
I messed that up. I didn't do that in the right order.
Alex Kurtzman is the architect of the Dark Universe.
Yeah.
Which, crashed and burned. But yeah, I get what you're saying, for sure.
I mean, look, we can't have a dark universe because, I don't know if you know this, I have this script called The Horrors, and it's great, and people should buy it.
Buddy.
I know.
You broke the rule of threes.
I had to put it in a drawer for years, but I can pitch things again.
Oh, that's true.
So I did things in the wrong order, so I'll go first for director. My director... She's one of the big directors on Yellow Jackets. She worked on The Invitation. She had a movie years ago called Girl Fight. Karen Kusama.
It's Karen Kusama, and I know that because she is my director also.
Oh, hell yeah! Nice! Oh, that's so good!
Yeah.
Karen Kusama. She's the right choice. I mean, Yellow Jackets alone specifically is what sells it. But
yes.
The Invitation is creepy. Girl Fight is like, it's girls fighting.
Yeah, I chose Karen Kusama first, and I was really struggling with the writer. And at one point, I even put without even thinking about the fact that like literally my wife works on Yellow Jackets, and I know that Karin Kusama is an executive producer of that show, and I put the showrunners of Yellow Jackets as the writers, and I was like, this looks pretty good, and I was like, wait. So yeah,
Perfect.
that's really funny.
That's amazing. Good.
Yeah.
Well, obviously we have to go with Nick and Tosca and Karin Kusama. I feel like it's too good not to.
Great. Perfect. Let's do it. Yeah.
And so that is our Wolfman 2023-2024.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. I had a thing. So, the original one is The Wolf Man.
Yes.
The space wolf space man.
Yes.
So we're doing The Wolf Man. The space wolf man, no space.
Right.
That's
like
we're
2010. 2010
Wolfman
Wolfman is that way.
Our Larry Talbot will be Jake Gyllenhaal. Sir John Talbot will be Vincent Regan. Gwen Conliffe will be Ruth Nega. Madame Sandra Talbot will be Alex Kingston. R.I.P. Ben Talbot, who will be Oliver Jackson Cohen. Jenny will be Melissa Fumero. Bella will be Oscar Haneda. Frank Andrews, Jenny's fiance, will be Ishmael Saeed. Freddie, the cop, will be Michelle Rodriguez. Bella's mom will be Zenobi Shroff. All of this will be written by Nick and Tosca and directed by Karin Kusama. That is The Wolfman.
I'm going to watch that movie.
Yeah. Cool. Scott, thank you again for being a part of Spooktober, spoopy vibes, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
This was fun. You made me watch 3 movies I'd never seen before, and I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah, great.
So now's the time. What would you like people to listen to? Is there anything that's coming back and releasing new episodes that you think people should really give a chance?
Yeah, there is Geek by Night, my original audio drama podcast. That's like, it's, that I co-write with my writing partners, Nick Jimenez and Cass Fredrickson. It is a series about friends who run a comic book shop together and get superpowers, and it sort of takes off from there. There are, I believe, 36 episodes out currently, and we are about to release the final 8 episodes that will conclude the story, which also includes 2 feature-length episodes.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty ambitious, this final season. I highly recommend everybody catching up if you've never listened and listening. It features lots of people. Sam, we got to get you to play a role in the final episodes at some point.
I'm available.
Yeah, and Zach Luna, past guest of your show. Everybody loves him. We referenced him earlier. Mm-hmm. Plays one of the characters in the show, and he's absolutely phenomenal. He was so good that we just kept bringing him back, and now the character is just like a main part of the ensemble.
Well, it's also kind of how you and I know each other, is because Zach, I think, auditioned for Geek by Night.
Yeah.
And that's how you two became friends, and that's how you and I met.
That's true.
So
very true.
That's how this episode is happening, right?
Yeah,
because
very
of Geek
true.
by Night.
So check out Geek by Night. Check out Franchisography, which is the podcast that I do with my writing partner, Nick Jimenez, where we talk about movie franchises and break them down a movie at a time. When you're listening to this, I believe we're wrapping up the Mummy franchise before going into what we're doing next, which I don't know if it has been announced at this point, so I don't want to say what it is, but it's really cool and really great, and Sam is going to be on it. So Franchisography, Geek by Night, listen to those things. And if you're a Doctor Who fan, check out the Doctor's Companion, the Doctor Who podcast that we do as well. So yeah, check out all of those things.
And if your excitement about those things is so high that you just have to find someone to talk to about it, another good thing you could do is join the Dueling Genre Discord.
Yeah.
It's an amazing community where it's active. It's basic. I want to say it's populated exclusively with amazing people. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you are an amazing person and want to be part of an amazing person community, come on and hang out.
I have basically quit social media because I just hang out on the Discord now, because it's like, why would I want to talk to a bunch of strangers when I can talk to all of these people that are like amazing and are never mean and great, and it's perfect environment to be in.
It's wonderful. People post pictures of their cats and dogs and pets of all varieties, and it's genuinely great.
Yeah.
But if you have to follow someone on social media, you can follow the podcast at Ideal Remake on Instagram, or you can follow me at Sam Gasch, SamGasch on BlueSky. And yeah, that is the end of October and the end of spooky season. So I will end spooky season the same way I end every episode. Scott, what is your favorite quote from the movie? Either version of the Wolfman.
Well, so look, I could very easily say the poem that the screenwriter of the Wolfman actually made up. It's not a real poem, which
It
is
was good.
yeah,
It's not
and
bad. It felt,
it's
yeah.
become part of sort of like werewolf canon. It's been repeated in a lot of other werewolf stories as if it's like a real poem, but really it's just from the Wolfman, which is even a man who is pure at heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. This has evolved over time to may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the full moon is bright. But very obvious. I don't want to do the obvious thing, so instead I'm going to say, you're insane, I tell you, I killed a wolf, a plain, ordinary wolf.
Excellent. Cool. October, we did it.